Hi, everybody. Welcome to All the Answers to Question Period. I'm your host, David Krayden, and we're going to be joining Question Period very shortly. The members are asking they're reciting their usual statements, member statements, or we used to call them SO31s when I worked on the Hill many, many years ago. So we'll be listening to probably hear a lot about Arrive Can, or as it's better known, Arrive Scam. 80 Do you believe that? $80,000 is supposed to cost at least 60 million ended up costing. That's a crime. Here we go.
The Prime Minister and his Arrive Scam app are not worth the cost or the corruption. After the revelations of corruption, waste, and so on by the Auditor General yesterday, I wrote to the RCMP to ask them to expand the criminal investigation into the Arrive Scam scandal. The Prime Minister has a history of blocking criminal investigations. Will he allow the RCMP to investigate him and his Arrive Scam scandal? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. The COVID-19 pandemic was something that happens once, not just once in a generation, but once in a century. And all the decisions we made were with a view to protecting Canadians. Clearly, we all expect the rules to be followed by the public service and by others, and we expect the RCMP and the authorities to do their job. But we should recall that this is the government that is concerned about border security. The Conservative Party keeps voting against assistance for CBSA.
Give it a break.
Assistance
This guy
to
won't
strengthen
take
our borders.
accountability for anything.
The Honourable Leader of the
This
Opposition.
has got to be the worst run scheme even in his
when
history.
It comes to corruption, Mr. Speaker, the revelations yesterday are the following. One, that the company that benefited drafted the terms of the contract. Second, two people working in the basement of a house received $20 million under a contract for an app that should have only cost $80,000. There was also whiskey given to officials. Will the Prime Minister respect the independence of the criminal investigation? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Of course, Mr. Speaker, we will always encourage and cooperate with authorities in doing their job, and that's what they'll do.
What a crook.
The public service must also follow the rules, and if those aren't followed, there will be consequences.
Damn scandal that he's trying
welcome with open arms
to distract attention
the Auditor
from,
General's report.
And won't take accountability for, won't take responsibility for, won't be held accountable.
Taxpayer money is being managed appropriately.
It's not being managed appropriately. It never has been. This is a bloody crime.
To protect Canadians from coast to coast.
And you've got the nerve to say you're protecting anybody? This thing did nothing to protect anybody.
And his Arrive scam are not worth the cost or the corruption. After yesterday's Auditor General revelations of corruption, waste, and mismanagement, I have written the RCMP asking them to expand their criminal investigation into the Prime Minister's Arrive scam. He has a track record of blocking criminal investigations. He tried to protect SNC-Lavalin from prosecution. He blocked the RCMP from investigating his illegal vacation to Billionaire Island. Will he stay out of the way, or will he again try to block the RCMP's criminal investigation into Arrive scam?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
COVID-19 pandemic was a once-in-a-generation, even once-in-a-century occurrence in which every decision we took was designed to protect Canadians' lives. At the same time, Mr. Speaker, even in a situation like that, there are rules that need to be followed, and we expect, and all Canadians expect, public servants to follow those rules, and we will, of course, encourage the RCMP to do its work, but it doesn't take politicians, even leaders of the opposition, to tell the RCMP to do their job. They do their job, Mr. Speaker, and they do it well.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
They do their job unless the Prime Minister blocks them from doing their job, like he did in his criminal offense where he committed the crime of accepting a gift from someone who was seeking a government contract from him. He blocked the RCMP from investigating him. And COVID-19 is something he saw as a once-in-a-generation opportunity to fill the pockets of his friends, whether it was the WE scandal, in which his family received $500,000, or whether it was Frank Bayless, or now the Arrive
List
scam.
them off,
Will he
Bear.
stay out of the way and let the police investigate him and his corrupt government in Arrive?
List them off.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, even a few years later in the pandemic, we see the Conservative leader reverts to type. While we were focusing on protecting Canadians every possible way we could, they were peddling conspiracy theories, Mr. Speaker, about vaccinations, about what have you. So while he continues to make personal
what
attacks,
conspiracy
we're gonna
theory? That
continue
the
to make sure
vaccine
we're
actually
delivering
worked
for
like a
Canadians.
vaccine?
And yes,
That it
we will
prevented
make sure
COVID?
that all
You know
rules
that's a
are
lie.
followed,
You
and
got
there
it
are
3 times.
consequences for people who broke the laws or broke the
What a
broke the
clown
rules,
this man
but
is.
we will continue
Peddling
to be there for
conspiracy
Canadians
theories.
while he plays partisan games.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Proof that he's not worth the cost or the corruption. He's now calling the Auditor General a conspiracy theorist. Now that she's revealed that his Arrive scam went from $80,000 to at least $60 million and counting, that 2 insiders got $20 million working from their home basement from this Prime Minister, that top Liberal government officials accepted high-end whiskeys and dinners in exchange for contracts that they let the contractors write for
They're
themselves.
so
Once
corrupt.
again, will
It's
he
sickening.
stay out of the way and let the police investigate his
All
government,
the way
or will he
down
try to
to
block it again?
all the way down to the single
The
malt
Right Honourable
Scotch
Prime Minister.
on the public
The
dime.
opposition needs to work on his French. I think he just needs to work on his listening skills, because in French, 2 answers ago, I complimented and thanked the Auditor General for her work in
Oh, I
ensuring that
bet you
rules are
did.
followed and processes have consequences if they are misdone. This is
If
a
they
fact
are
that we know
misdone.
that even during a pandemic, we need to be stepping up to protect people along the rules. That's why there will be consequences for anyone who broke those rules or those laws, while we continue to do everything we need to do to deliver for Canadians, to support people in their daily lives, and build a better future for all Canadians.
What a bunch of
Member for
platitudes.
Belleuil-Chambly.
Resign.
My colleague from Montcalm made a proposal in connection with medical assistance in dying that would allow the final
Here's another one of
decision
these
to be
euthanasia
delayed when it
enthusiasts.
comes to mental illness in general, while at the same time
You should be the first one in the lineup
accommodating
that if it comes to
patients or
mental
future
illness.
patients in terms of advance requests and in keeping with Quebec's desires. In that context,
Go to
the
hell with your Quebec
accelerated
desires.
passage of
It's your
the
desires.
motion that's currently before the House is possible. Would the Prime Minister vote in favor of the member of Montcalm from Montcalm's amendment? Right, Honourable Prime Minister.
They just
Mr.
can't
Speaker, we
kill
all know
people
that medical
fast enough.
assistance in
No
dying
wonder
or
the block's
MAID
in
is
bed
a
with Trudeau.
difficult and very personal choice that
Oh, here he
individuals
is. A
and
very
families
personal,
have to
very
make
difficult choice.
in
But you
very
want to make it
difficult
for people, don't
times
you?
in their lives. We know as a government and as a parliament that we are responsible for ensuring that vulnerable people are protected, but at the same time, that people's choices and rights are respected should they choose to
Hey,
access
Jerry, you're right.
MAID. We
He
will
keeps
continue
looking
the
more and more
conversation,
stupid.
including with the government of Quebec, to find the best path to follow for everyone. The Honourable Member for
What a
Belleuil-Chambly.
sanctimonious hypocrite.
Well, perhaps he should be talking to us. We're right here in this parliament. This is an opportunity to avoid problems for him with the conservative right wing, the religious right wing, and
What
perhaps
does
even
the
some people
religious
in
right
his own
wing have
caucus.
to do
This is an
with not
opportunity
wanting to
to
see
show that
mentally
here in
ill
this
people
parliament
killed
we
by the
can
state?
find
How
common ground
stupid are
and
you,
respect
blockhead?
choices that are
All these
difficult and
blockheads make
personal
me as mad as liberals. Totally dense.
without it taking forever.
Oh,
This is not
take
a time
just
to
not enough time.
do anything other than making the compassionate and humane decisions. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
I'm a
I'd like to
Nazi.
thank the Bloc Québécois for contributing to this debate in a compassionate and thoughtful way. This is the
is
type
not
of
a
conversation
compassionate
we
and
should
thoughtful
keep
way.
having here in this Parliament. How
See, Trudeau's just ecstatic that that the Bloc isn't going to ask him about ad scam. They want to ask him about euthanasia. And Trudeau just loves to talk about euthanasia because he wants everybody to be eligible, especially people who don't vote for him. Now he's up there feeling good again. He should be resigning. Ad scam is a national scandal that would bring down any government, except jackasses like this guy, Jagmeet Singh, are propping this government up.
Homelessness encampments are a manifestation of how broken our housing and homeless system is. She describes it as life or death crisis. While this prime minister says he could have and should have done more to build housing, it shows how out of touch he is. So will the prime minister take this crisis seriously, follow the recommendations, and ensure people have a safe place to call home?
It's a judgment who owns just one suit, apparently. He
Speaker, I very much welcome
doesn't
the
want
interest
to
and the
ask
efforts
him
of
either.
the New Democratic Party to support us in everything that we're doing on delivering on housing. We recently signed housing accelerator agreements with Quebec, with Nunavut, with cities across the country to unlock over 500,000 new homes. We introduced a suite of new measures to unlock the construction of over 600,000 new apartments. We cracked down on short-term rentals to unlock up to 30,000 more apartments. We
Read your
introduced a
script,
mortgage
boy.
charter. We're continuing to step up on measures to counter homelessness, which is something that far too many Canadians are experiencing during these difficult times. We'll keep being there for people.
The honourable member for Burnaby South.
Heard the housing advocate gave a failing grade to their government. La défense fédérale.
Well, then why are you supporting
According
it,
to the
Jagmeet?
Liberal-appointed housing
If
advocate,
it gets a failing
homeless
grade, but it gets a
encampments are a
passing grade from
manifestation
you.
of
In
how
fact, it
broken
gets
our
an
housing
A.
and homelessness
You
system
just can't
is.
get enough Liberal government.
She calls it a life and death crisis.
As long as it
Meanwhile,
keeps your
all the Prime
story ass
Minister
in
has to say
power.
is that he woulda, coulda, shoulda done more. Will the Prime Minister give his head a shake and stop listening to nothing but the advice of corporate landlords and help renters in this country? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. On the contrary, Mr. Speaker, we will continue to listen to community organizations, to municipal partners.
You don't listen to
and
anybody
provincial
but your own
partners.
goddamn
We will
voice.
continue to work hand in hand. We're signing agreements to accelerate housing construction in Quebec and all across the country to have more than 50,000 new houses built and 600,000 new apartment units. We're still dealing with the problem
Oh,
of
don't forget
short-term
rolling up his
rentals,
sleeves. He's
and
always
we're
rolling up his sleeves too,
also
Kelly.
dealing with the problem of homelessness and people in vulnerable situations, but we still have a lot of work to do.
Years of this NDP Liberal Prime Minister, we know that corruption is a feature and not a bug. SNC Lavalin, We Charity, and now the Prime Minister's Arrive scam at millions the Canadians won't get back. The grift and the mismanagement run so deep that the auditors couldn't even figure out how much got shipped off to Liberal insiders. So after what we learned yesterday, will the Prime Minister join us in calling for the RCMP to get to the bottom of all of it, every single dollar?
The Honourable Minister for Public Works.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Et comme nous l'avons
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as we said yesterday, we welcome the Auditor General's report. And
There's
we'll
another
follow all of her
shining example of how the
when it comes
COVID
to
vaccine works
ArriveCam.
so well.
As the Minister for Public
This
Safety
guy
said
couldn't
yesterday,
get COVID fast enough.
some of the recommendations in the report have already been implemented, including implementing new measures to guarantee that tasks and deliverables are clearly defined in professional services contracts. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thornhill.
Minister, the call is coming from inside of the House. They want Canadians to believe that they unknowingly got robbed blind by their own Liberal insiders and that they are going to get to the bottom of the Prime Minister's Arrive scam app, which, by the way, didn't work. We didn't need, and where 75% of contractors did no work but had time to buy the government whiskey. He is not worth the cost, and he is not worth the corruption, and Canadians want their $60 million back. No one trusts them to investigate themselves, so will the Prime Minister stand up right here, right now, and call in the Mounties?
L'Honorable Ministre des Services Publics.
Honourable Minister of Public Services.
They're
and
so
Procurement.
politicized now, they
Thank you
won't
to our colleague
investigate.
for the question. As we said yesterday, we thank again the Auditor General for her recommendations on the review of the ArriveCan application. Some of the report's recommendations have already been implemented, including the introduction of new measures to ensure the tasks and deliverables are clearly defined in professional services contracts. Our departments take very seriously their duty to optimize resources.
These guys are just so beyond the pale.
The honourable member from Barrie Innisfil.
The Arrive scam is just like the Prime Minister, not worth the cost and not worth the corruption. The investigation and damning report issued by the Auditor General on Arrive Cam even shocked her. But really, after 8 years of this NDP Liberal government, no one should be shocked by the level of incompetence and wasteful spending Canadians have seen from this Prime Minister.
No, you expect
now,
this.
A reasonable thinking person could conclude from the report that Arrive scam has reached a level of criminality.
That Trudeau needs his ass kicked so badly.
Call on the RCMP to expand an investigation into Arrive scam based on the revelations in the Auditor General's report.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety.
As we've said in this House time and time again, any misconduct in the procurement process is unacceptable. We accept that the president of the CBSA has initiated internal audits and issued some initial reports. Mr. Speaker, she has also referred some of the concerning reports to the RCMP, but members opposite should know it's not politicians who direct the RCMP, it's the RCMP who does this work, and the RCMP will set the mandate for wherever the case may lead.
They
and we
won't
will
touch
accept
the case.
that work.
Hey, Trudeau might have hot-footed it out of there again.
From Barrie Innisfil.
The question was a simple one, really, Mr. Speaker, but after 8 years of this NDP Liberal government, who in this place or across Canada expects a proper response from a Prime Minister who's not worth the cost and not worth the corruption? The AG's report causes a reasonable person to conclude that what happened with the Arrive scam has reached a level of criminality that must be investigated. So I'm going to ask again, will the Prime Minister join Conservatives and call on the RCMP to expand an investigation into Arrive scam based on the revelations that were contained in the Auditor General's report?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety.
This app was a joke to begin with. All it did is prevent people from coming home.
Auditor General's report. We thank her for this work. There are obviously some concerning allegations being initiated. This is precisely why CBSA initiated the audit. This is precisely why they then referred some materials
Of
to
course
the
the
RCMP.
are bought
Mr.
off,
Speaker,
just like the
doesn't
most of the
matter how
media is
many
bought
times the
off.
Conservatives say it. Politicians do not direct
The judiciary and the police have become completely politicized, as the legacy media has.
With any misconduct will come with consequences.
And look at this. Look at this. Absolute moron.
The honourable member for
Standing up there
Ottawa.
reciting her little
Mr.
script.
Speaker, yesterday the Auditor General confirmed our worst suspicions. The ArriveCan app cost $60 million instead of $80,000, and she said that the files are in such a shoddy state that it's impossible to calculate the true cost. This is unheard of. We need to know, is this a matter of gross incompetence or corruption? Will the government ask the RCMP to investigate further? Honourable Minister of Public Services
Is the coward in the House?
Thank you, Mr.
Lucy,
Speaker.
I can't
There's a number
see
of
from here because I'm not there today.
The RCMP operates at arm's
I wouldn't
length,
doubt if
and as the Prime Minister
run
just
off.
said, we
This
have
happened
confidence
last
in their
week.
ability to do their job. Secondly, the Auditor
He
General
doesn't like any
did
pressure.
indeed reveal some shocking conduct in the public service, and this is undesirable, despite how urgent it was to take action and provide assistance to millions of Canadians. Many of the recommendations have already been implemented and others will be shortly. The Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, seems to me that when you want to shed light on things, a simple yes or no answer would do. We also learned that GC Strategies got $20 million, and there was no paperwork to confirm that anything was requested or delivered. And GC Strategies even got to set the terms of their contract. If the government has nothing to hide, they should say, yes, we want an RCMP investigation and we want the scope of that investigation to be expanded. Will they? Yes or no? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Once again.
Yeah, Trudeau's gone.
In a free democracy, it's not the government or governments that dictate to the police how they should
the former
do their
health
job.
minister
That's not
who
how
said we
things
should be
work
getting the
in a
jab for the rest
democracy
of our
like
life.
ours.
Or
that
at
we're
least until the
fortunate enough
cancer
to live
comes.
in. But public
people are
servants
so
have responsibilities. The Auditor General
reprehensible.
did
They have
find
facilitated
shortcomings in the work
killing of
done by
Canadians
the
in this
public
country
service,
with
and
their
this is something
with
that
their
we need
vaccine.
to take
And
seriously.
they will
The
not
honourable
even
member for
admit the thing
Montcalm.
didn't
Mr. Speaker,
even
medical
work.
assistance in dying or MAID is about free choice. The role of government is not to decide for others.
Why is the Bloc so
role of
obsessed
government
with
is to
euthanasia?
provide the conditions for free and
These
informed
people are
choice.
bloody
Those who don't want
dangerous.
MAID
They should be locked
simply
up with the
don't have to
Liberals.
ask for it. The National Assembly is unanimous. Quebec is ready and has its own legislation. Will the federal government amend the criminal code to allow advance requests for people who are suffering? The Honourable Minister of
Just
Justice and
can't
Attorney
kill them
General of
fast
Canada.
enough, eh,
Mr.
blockhead?
Speaker, I have deep respect for the crucial work that Quebec has done in the area of advance requests. Canada has just one criminal code, and that's for a good reason. Canadians deserve to have consistent standards around what is criminal and what is not.
This is the guy who had
There
his
is no
car
easy
stolen 3 times.
solution that would allow for Quebec to have an exemption from
This
the criminal
joke of an
code
attorney
in
general.
this area, but we will undertake to work with Quebec to contemplate the next steps. Thank you. The honourable member for Montcalm. Quebec would not have to ask for an exemption if Ottawa had applied the majority recommendations on advance requests tabled a year ago by the special committee.
How screwed up politics
Today,
is in this country.
Quebec
We've got a
is ready,
separatist party
and
sitting in the House of
shouldn't have to
Commons
suffer because of the government's
demanding that more Canadians get killed through a
federal government
euthanasia
has
program.
two choices.
This is absolutely
They can
insane.
either
But this is what this
offer
country has
this
come to.
exception from the
Try to
criminal
make any
code
sense of this.
immediately, or
This
introduce
fat
legislation
blockhead
on
standing up here and
advance
saying,
requests.
please kill
Will
more
they make
Canadians.
the
We
humane
demand
choice
so in
and
Quebec.
show some
This guy is
compassion? The Honourable
absolutely
Minister of Justice and Attorney General of
representative
Canada.
of how
Mr.
screwed up
Speaker,
this country is.
MAID
Don't you love this guy's suit?
is
His big,
a deeply personal and complex choice. We're
nice
trying
suit.
to
Where'd you
strike
get that?
a
At the
balance
Goodwill?
between individual autonomy and protecting vulnerable people. We have taken an approach from the outset that is cautious, and we owe Canadians and Quebecers
I wouldn't even
an
answer.
approach
I wouldn't
that is
even
thoughtful
bother
and cautious.
Député de Terrebonne.
The honourable member for Terrebonne.
Well, of course they do that
Let's
anyway.
recap the emergency account situation.
Oh,
if we
right.
project the figures, nearly
Is
150,000
this
SMEs
country
were unable
totally
to repay.
dysfunctional?
Nearly
I would say at
200,000
the moment it
companies
is.
have had to take on
In fact,
debt
I'm going to
to
shut this
repay.
woman up for a minute. I would say Canada is completely dysfunctional right now. As we look at the ad scam scandal, Trudeau will not take responsibility. In fact, he says we did the right thing because we were helping Canadians with this program that did nothing to help Canadians any more than his lockdowns did, any more than his mandates did, any more than the COVID vaccine did. This was all mythology. This is all lies. These things did nothing to help Canadians. And this moron Trudeau, who was here for what, all of 3 minutes today, stands up, reads his script, and takes off. Who's he going to meet up with? Zelensky, so he can promise him more money? This country is completely out of control. We need to recognize how dysfunctional Canada is. When you watch Question Period, you realize that nobody with any intelligence is in control. We've got parties supporting this government, and God knows what they're getting out of it. Who's been bought and paid for?
Years, not worth
Back
the
to the
cost, not
real
worth
opposition. The only opposition in the House.
Receive for their hard-earned tax
There's only one
dollars.
opposition party.
That was
I don't
750 times
I don't campaign
over
for it.
budget,
I don't like everything they say,
177
but there is only one
forced
opposition
10,000
party in the
people
House.
into quarantine by error and caused chaos at our borders, ruining any chance of a tourism recovery. Will the PM join us and call on the RCMP to expand its investigation based on yesterday's shocking report from the Auditor General? Hear, hear, hear.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, any misconduct during a procurement process is completely unacceptable. This is precisely why when the CBSA learned of some irregularities, they
They got a
immediately
parliamentary
initiated
secretary
an internal audit
who can
based on
barely
some
get
of that
through it,
work, Mr. Speaker,
answering
they
these questions
referred
today
some
about
of
this
these
scandal.
elements to the
Because the cabinet
RCMP.
ministers don't
It's
give a damn.
unfortunate when
They
situations like
think
this
it's
occur,
great
but Mr.
the
Speaker,
Canadians got
it is
fleeced
also
again.
the fact that the
They think
CBSA
this
has
is
been
business
following
as
the
usual
process
because
to
it
ensure
is.
that something like this can never happen again,
If there's
and
not
that any
enough
wrongdoing
outrage out there
comes
in
with
Canada
consequences.
to say
Honourable
enough
member
of
from
this,
Niagara Falls.
Speaker,
this
fact. The
is
headline
no
of the
longer
Auditor
a
General's
country.
report on the disastrous Liberal Arrive Scam Act said it best. Glaring disregard for basic management and contracting practices. This report is a metaphor of 8 years of Liberal mismanagement, incompetence, and disregard for hardworking Canadians. This app is just like the Prime Minister after 8 years. Not worth the cost, not worth the corruption. Again, I will ask, will the PM
these are
join
adding
us and
corruption to
call on
cost
the
now.
RCMP to
It was a
expand its
dumb slogan to
investigation
begin with.
based on the revelations of yesterday's shocking Auditor General's report?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public
Not
Safety.
another shot of
Mr.
O'Connell.
Speaker, as I've said before, it is not politicians who direct investigations with the RCMP. And the RCMP will determine the scope as the evidence permits. Mr. Speaker, it is important to know that any wrongdoing and misconduct in procurement will come with consequences. We have confidence that the CBSA
There will be no
is completing
consequences.
this
There
work.
never
They're
have
doing
been.
initial
Why
audits,
would there be now?
And as I've said, the RCMP is looking into the matters where necessary.
What a liar.
L'honorable député de
The honourable member for Mégantic-L'Érable. Mr. Speaker, imagine
Amen.
for a moment
Liar.
that you award an emergency contract to fix a leak in the roof of your official residence at the farm. You hire a contractor who tells you it'll cost $20,000. You give him the contract, he starts work, and then sends you a first invoice for $500,000 with no explanation. Are you going to pay it? No questions asked? Well, that's exactly what happened with the Prime Minister's ArriveCan app. The Auditor General saw it, the Ombudsman saw it, and no one in the PMO saw it? It's hard to believe, Mr. Speaker. Will the Prime Minister join us and ask the RCMP to expand its investigation to include all of the allegations? The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As we've already said a number of times today and yesterday, we thank the Auditor General for her report. We note duly the shocking revelations. We understand that the circumstances were urgent,
but we had
that's
nothing
no
to do with them.
for breaking
Shocking
the rules.
revelation.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Just, where did they come from?
Monsieur le Président, le Premier ministre.
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. The Prime Minister's ArriveCan app has forced the quarantine of 10,000 Canadians in error. The application was supposed to cost 80 grand and now it's $60 million. The families waiting in line at food banks deserve better answers, and the workers whose taxes are going to go up again are angry at having to foot the bill. Will the Prime Minister, who's not worth the cost, commit to giving back to families who paid for work that was never delivered
These people are
the money
just
he wasted on the ArriveCan app?
comprehension.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My colleague surely understands our answer now. We've repeated it many times.
Yeah, you've
We
repeated
thank
the
the Auditor
bullshit many
General for her
times.
report. We take note of the errors and missteps mentioned in her reports. Many of her recommendations we've already started implementing, and the rest we will continue to implement in the upcoming weeks. We acted in an urgent emergency situation. We had to protect the lives of thousands of Canadians across Canada, but unfortunately, things were not done at the standards we expect of public servants.
Member from Nunavut.
The Supreme Court's decision affirmed what we already know. Indigenous peoples have the right to make decisions about their own children, youth, and families. The federal government must ensure Indigenous children receive the care they need without delays. Indigenous services plan.
Doesn't this drive you absolutely crazy? We've got only one opposition party. I know it's the only opposition party asking questions about ad scam. This should be enough this should be enough to justify a non-confidence vote against this government. This should be enough to justify that. In any normal times where you haven't got two opposition parties bought and paid for by the federal government. And this is absolute crap. The Canadians put up with this. I am just so angry at the dysfunction in Canada right now, and we just seem to think it's becoming normal. You know, and I just love to talk about everything else that doesn't really matter, like the climate crisis that's been completely manufactured. Haven't heard about climate change today. That's funny.
The community of Carmen, Manitoba witnessed a tragedy when a mother and her 3 children and her niece were murdered with her husband as the main suspect. This reminds us that we desperately need
this is the one who wants the universal basic income.
for women and families.
This
and
MP
mental
here,
health supports to
she wants the universal basic income. And I haven't seen Charlie Angus lately. You hear what Charlie's up to? I wrote a story about this the other day. He's got a private member's bill that will make it illegal, criminally illegal, to promote fossil fuels. And that means putting a bumper sticker on your car, wearing a button on your jacket, any kind of advertising, anything positive, said, written, communicated. The NDP are a bunch of fascists now, propping up a bunch of fascists, namely the Liberal government that celebrates Nazis in the gallery. And they blather on and on about the things they say they're doing. But they're not doing anything except destroying the country at a rapid rate.
The Honourable Member for Pontiac.
Speaker, affordable daycare is so important. It's essential to provide women with the freedom to choose whether they decide to stay home, raise their kid, or pursue their career. But in most cases, balancing both. But women in my riding, Mr. Speaker, tell me that they have trouble finding spot in the daycare. So can the Minister of Family update this House on exactly what the discussion she has with provinces to ensure the success of the $10 daycare?
Tell us what a great job the Liberal government's doing.
The Minister of Families and Social Development.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Canada-wide system is making life more affordable for Canadian families.
I'll have a scotch and soda.
By delivering on $10 a day childcare.
Every time Jenna gets up.
7 provinces or territories and 50% reduction across the country. As fees have reduced, of course, demand has increased for these spots. And we've seen an increase in the number of spots available, with 82,000 new spaces announced by the provinces and territories. The provinces and territories signed on to help build this system together, and we will work with them to hold them account to do so. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Edmonton.
What a bunch of blather.
So the Prime Minister found over $60 million for his Arrive Scam app, but he continues to want to increase the carbon tax by 23% on April 1st.
Comment, Ellie.
Now we are seeing the far-left NDP Alberta leadership candidates weigh in, and I quote, "Nobody is on board with what the Prime Minister did with the federal carbon tax. He absolutely broke trust and broke confidence. After 8 years of failure, how can he continue to raise this carbon tax on Canadians?"
The Honourable Minister for the Environment and Climate Change.
You believe Trudeau couldn't stand it for more than 3 minutes?
Has reiterated many times, 8 out of 10 Canadians get a bit more from carbon pricing back than what they pay. And carbon pricing
just keep reciting your lies, Stephen.
Pollution in Canada, something
that you've been doing it your whole life. You're nothing but a Greenpeace activist. You put a suit on one day, and enough idiots in your riding decided you should be an MP. If there's that many stupid people, then I guess they deserve you.
Well, I have more, Mr. Speaker. Another Alberta leadership candidate said, and I quote, "There's no way people can be on board with a federal plan, even when the Prime Minister isn't on board, when he's playing games with it." And another one said, "We must move away from a consumer carbon tax." And another one said, "The federal carbon levy is dead." When he loses the support of the far-left Alberta NDP, this minister must know he has a problem. Will he cancel his carbon tax before April 1st, once and for all?
The Honourable Minister for the Environment and Climate Change.
Mr. Speaker, since we're talking about Alberta, I wonder if the Conservative Party of Canada and its leader support the freeze that the provincial government has put on $30 billion worth of investment. Thousands of jobs are at risk in Alberta because of the reckless decision of the Premier to freeze renewable energy development, the fastest sector for energy development in this country, Mr. Speaker. What has the Conservative Party have to say about that? Nothing, because they don't care about economic development, they don't care about
No, they care about keeping the lights on and the heat on, unlike you, who want Canadians to freeze in the dark.
The honourable member from Sarnia-Lambton.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister wasted more than $60 million on his ArriveCan scam app, and he's going to make Canadians pay more by quadrupling the carbon tax. It's going up 23% on April the 1st. And so after 8 years of this Liberal NDP government, it's no surprise, but this Prime Minister is not worth the cost. Why do Canadians have to foot the bill for this government's corrupt spending?
The Honourable Minister for the Environment and Climate Change.
Right now in Canada, Mr. Speaker, we have a province in Alberta that has to be talking about rationing water next summer because of climate impacts. We have atmospheric rivers in British Columbia that is affecting thousands of people, ski resorts that have to close down. We're seeing the cost of climate change that have not doubled, not tripled, that have increased 10 times over the last decade. What is the answer of the Conservative Party of Canada?
This is all
free again, Mr. Speaker.
Nothing
Let the biggest,
but
most profitable
lies.
and polluting countries get off the hook. Not on this side of the House, Mr. Speaker. We will fight.
It will make, even if we live in Cape, I say this every bloody time, these imbeciles bring this issue up.
It's important once again to remind
If we all lived in
when
Cape,
we take the floor, we're expected
shut up,
to listen.
shut up. If we all lived in capes, it would make absolutely no difference to the global carbon footprint that they are so obsessed with. So Guilbeault is full of crap. No, and this guy's in a lecturing again.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Canadians have been forced to pay through the nose for everything after 8 years of this Liberal NDP government. Not only did they give contractors $20 million for doing no work on the Arrive Scam app, but the Auditor General says this $80,000 app cost over $60 million of taxpayer money. Now they're increasing the carbon tax on April the 1st. So why should Canadians have to foot the bill for this government's corrupt overspending?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, in the last election campaign, all of the honourable members across from us went around to their neighbourhoods in Sarnia, Lambton, and elsewhere with pamphlets with Mr. O'Toole on the cover. Remember the black T-shirt?
Why are we bringing back that nightmare? Maybe this guy hasn't noticed that Aaron O'Toole is no longer even sitting in the House. This is the government House leader. Is he that stupid?
The instruction of your whips who are asking you to please listen respectfully to the answer. I'm going to ask the government House leader to start again from the top.
Mr. Speaker, in the last election campaign, all of the colleagues on the other side of the House went around their neighborhoods, around their ridings. They had nice glossy brochures with Mr. O'Toole on the cover. He had a nice black T-shirt on. What was in there? A price on pollution, Mr. Speaker. A price on pollution. All of these members went around their neighborhoods committing to put a price on pollution as part of a plan to fight climate change.
Well, it just shows you how bad a leader O'Toole was.
Why should we believe them now?
George's got some extras. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Beauport-Limoilou. The Liberals will not be able to hide from this ArriveCan scandal so easily. A simple app that should have cost.
Well, how about that? And a question from the block about the Arrive scam scandal.
60 million to GC Strategies, which didn't end up actually doing anything. They didn't offer any services.
After they got their euthanasia questions out of the way.
The Auditor General has confirmed that this occurred with the support of state employees. Recently, the 3 involved ministers have been passing the hot potato around, but When are we going to get answers about ArriveCan? Canadians deserve answers and accountability. The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I thank my colleague for her question. She has heard the answer many times now. We thank the Auditor General for her work. We acknowledge the major issues that she raised. We acted in a time of crisis. That is not an excuse for the lack of information and the lack of record keeping, the lack of record sharing. But thankfully, many of the Auditor General's recommendations have already been implemented. The Honourable Member for Beauport-Limoilou.
Oh, yeah. It's all the problem's been solved.
Understand how it's possible.
That's all you ever hear from Liberals. Yes.
To have a 750%
not a problem anymore.
cost overrun without any minister cluing in. A handful of people got $60 million of taxpayer money.
Justin Trudeau snuck out. Yes, he did it again.
Explain such a total lack of competence regarding basic management. How is it possible to waste $60 million? And how many other contracts like this did the government turn a blind eye to? The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the middle of the pandemic, hundreds of people were dying of COVID. Billions of dollars were lost weekly. Economic losses. It was very difficult to transit the border, but we made it possible to keep the border open so that essential medication and product and equipment could transit the border for Quebec's businesses and Canada's businesses. But there was a lack of record keeping. There was a lack of thoroughness from some public servants. We acknowledge that, and it is totally unacceptable. I ask the member for Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier.
That's really quite pathetic to watch this.
Please keep some control during answers.
I wonder why the Prime Minister's priority is higher taxes and not food affordability. He can find $60 million for his ArriveCan app, but he needs to quadruple the carbon tax on farmers and food. We are hearing the pleas from Canadian families who want to axe the tax to make food affordable. I was in Sudbury this week meeting with food banks who are at a breaking point as demand has doubled and is rising. There's a common sense Conservative bill, 234, which will give a carbon tax carve-out for farmers and lower the price of food. This Prime Minister is not worth the cost, but will he cancel his plans to increase the carbon tax on April 1st so Canadians can feed themselves?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I'm glad the Conservatives are.
Oh, we have to hear from Christie today.
The economy, because it gives me the chance to
he's just
share
don't make any sense.
In January, thanks to the hard work of Canadians, Canada created 37,000 new jobs. Wages in Canada have been outpacing inflation for the past 12 months.
And yes, the lowest inflation rate in the G7.
That is lower than it was at any time that Stephen Harper was Prime Minister. The only thing Conservatives know how to do is kill jobs.
The country is crumbling, and this half-witted finance minister just sees the rosy picture.
Going to food bank every single month. But today is Canadian Agriculture Day, and how do the Liberals celebrate? By increasing the carbon tax 23% on April 1st. But it gets worse. We now know that the amendments to 234 pushed through by Liberal-appointed senators will increase costs on farmers $200 million. This Conservative common sense bill in its original form will save farmers $1 billion by 2030. For Canada Agriculture Day, will the Prime Minister celebrate with me an access tax on farmers to make food more affordable?
The Honourable Minister for Agriculture and Agri-Food.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate my honourable colleague's question. And I'm
Oh, no.
a farmer on Canada Agriculture Day, and
You
being
were
part
not
of
a
government
farmer.
that has an environmental plan. It makes me very proud. It's so important, and farmers understand we have to take care of the land, and we must have an environmental plan. And as far as the price,
Well, then that's got
on
nothing to
food,
do with your climate
the
change
Agriculture
plan.
Committee, Tyler McCann of the Canadian Agri-Food Policy Institute, indicated to the committee members on agriculture that there's no data to
He can't even
support
read it.
carbon
He's as
pricing
demented
is
as Joe
resulting
Biden.
in an increase in food prices.
Where's this oxygen
The
tank?
honourable member for
That's funny.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister wasted $60 million on his corrupt ArriveCan app. And now he's asking Canadians for even more money through the carbon tax, which the Bloc wants to radically increase, by the way. After 8 years of this government, everything costs more. But worse still, the Bloc Québécois supports Liberal policies. So, Mr. Speaker, will the Prime Minister confirm that he will scrap the carbon tax so that Canadians can breathe a little more? The Honourable Minister for the Environment and Climate Change. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to remind my honourable colleague that the last time I checked, the St. Lawrence is still in Quebec, and in Quebec, the provincial system applies. They have a cap and trade system, which was implemented well before the federal carbon pricing system. That's what applies in Quebec.
Before
and
the
that
federal
system in
government,
Quebec is working well to reduce Quebec's emissions. The Bloc Québécois didn't implement it, nor did the government. The government of Quebec implemented that system. And in fact, many Conservative members voted in favor of Quebec's system.
The honourable member from Aurora, Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We know that sexual and reproductive health care encompasses mental health care, which is always important, but especially so for women during their reproductive lives. Knowing what an exciting but also stressful time it can be for a new mother, and how a mother's well-being affects not only her but also her newborn and other family members, could the Minister of Mental Health and Addictions and Associate Minister of Health explain how our government is supporting women who choose motherhood by addressing perinatal mental health?
Well, if they're having mental health problems, watch out. They could be eligible for MAID.
Speaker, I want to thank the member for Aurora Oak Ridges. We all know her to be a strong advocate for women's health. My message to new parents who might be struggling: you do not have to carry this burden alone. I want to thank the Canadian Perinatal Mental Health Collaborative.
They want to euthanize mentally ill people.
Working to develop national standards
don't commit suicide. You're not alone.
We're supporting families, Mr. Speaker, by creating guidance.
They're not supporting families. They're supporting liberals. The only thing they can't support.
That may face poor mental health during the perinatal period.
This is an evil, wicked government.
We'll do everything we can to ensure families have access to quality mental health when they need it and where they need it.
The honourable member from Peterborough, Kawartha Lakes.
This Prime Minister is not worth the cost of the suffering he's causing. The Payne family operates Asphodel Sheet Company. They were recognized as Farm Family of the Year in Peterborough County. Now, the carbon tax is set to increase 23% on April 1st, and it is truly hurting them. The kids don't know what's going to happen to their family farm. So Katie, who's 15, Jolene, who's 13, and Lucy, who's 9, asked me to ask the Prime Minister this. Why is the Canadian government making it so difficult for the agriculture industry to do their job of feeding the country?
Because they want Canadians to starve.
Minister for the Environment
That's
and
why.
Climate Change.
It's really that simple.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to read a quote to you from Glenn White, who was the former Vice President of National Farmers Union. And I quote, "Farmers will be among the hardest hit if we don't act to slash greenhouse gas emissions and stabilize the climate. For this reason, to protect farmers, the NFU supports pollution pricing, Mr. Speaker. It is an important policy tool to reduce the harmful emission fueling the climate crisis and threatening farms and food supplies."
The honourable member from Bay of Quinte.
Mr. Speaker, we have devastating news today out of Bay of Quinte. Cascades, a company that has been operating a plant that's been in existence in Quinte West for 100 years, is closing its doors and axing 230 jobs because of high inflation and interest rates under 8 years of this Liberal NDP government. Now Canadians who already face high cost to eat and heat their homes have to worry about a paycheck. And people in Belleville, still reeling from a major overdose epidemic, now have to worry about unemployment. When will this government fix the budget, cut inflation, and cut interest rates so companies don't have to close and employees don't have to lose their jobs?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker.
Oh, here she goes. What a condescending witch.
Every Canadian family.
This is the female face of fascism, as Tucker Carlson said. She with the Nazi grandfather, she who supports Ukrainian neo-Nazis, she is the female face of fascism, freezing your bank account, telling you what you can do, taking your freedom away, telling you you've never had it so good in this country under people like me. She is a disgrace.
Honourable member from Bay Quinte.
Speaker, that tone-deaf answer will give little comfort to the residents of Quinte West who've just lost their jobs. Let's give a real reality look at what's happening in Canada right now. Over the last 4 months, TD has slashed 3,000 jobs. Canadian Tire slashed 3% of its workforce. Enbridge has slashed 650 jobs. Rona has slashed 300 jobs. Manulife slashed 250 jobs. After 8 years of this high-spending Liberal NDP government, the only job Canadians want to see slashed is that Prime Minister. When will this government fix the budget, cut inflation, and cut interest rates so Canadians can keep their job?
Greenland needs to have her citizenship revoked. You know, Leanna.
Mr. Speaker,
Here she comes back.
We will take no lessons from the Conservatives
No
when it
lessons.
comes to supporting the most vulnerable among us. Since we have formed government, 2.3 million Canadians are out of poverty. Poverty in Canada was at 14.5% when the Conservatives left office. Today, it's down to 7.4%. We know there's a lot more work to do. That is why we are pointing out to Canadians that all the Conservatives want is to cut.
We all know this is a lie. We all know we can't afford
Halifax West.
anything above basic livelihood these days.
For many women to buy menstrual products. This government recognizes
And the Liberals are doing wonders for that too.
The Menstrual Equity Fund pilot to provide free menstrual products, those that need them most, through Food Banks Canada.
Yeah, especially in the male bathrooms in the Canadian Armed Force bases.
Provide an update on the progress of the pilot in my province and throughout Canada.
Honourable member for
they love that
and gender
question.
equality.
Thank you so much to the member for her advocacy and hard work and for the chance to update this. So, Mr. Speaker, menstrual products are a basic need, but not everyone has access to them. So since launching the Menstrual Equity Fund pilot last September, almost 400 locations, including 14 in that member's province of Nova Scotia, have helped pull more than 1 million Canadians out of period poverty. That's 35 million products out the door in 6 months. We're providing real solutions to real challenges, menstrual products for those who need them, when they need them, period, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Rosemont-La Petite Patrie. Mr. Speaker, a 3-bedroom apartment near Verdun Metro Station in Montreal. There's a leak in the bathroom, balconies threatening to collapse, holes in the ceiling, mold all over the place. That's the home where Isabelle Gagnon and her partner Maxime Pilon live with their newborn baby. This is a result of decades of Conservative and Liberal government cuts to affordable housing. Instead of proposing solutions, though, the Conservative leader prefers to insult Quebec's mayors, and the Liberals are dragging their feet when it comes to the housing crisis. Why are the Liberals letting people down? Letting down people like Ms. Gagnon and Mr. Pilon? The Honourable Minister for Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
Member for his question and for his concern for the quality of accommodations that families are living through in this country. He's right to point out that for several decades, governments, both Liberal and Conservative, failed to invest in affordable housing, but that changed with the introduction of the National Housing Strategy in 2017. We've been investing to help build or retrofit several 100,000 homes that people are living in today. In the fall economic statement, we've recapitalized the Affordable Housing Fund with an additional $1 billion and another $300 million towards cooperative housing. We're going to continue to make the investments necessary to ensure that every Canadian has a roof over their head.
The honourable member from Edmonton Griesbach.
Mr. Speaker, as Netanyahu bombs Rafah, the supposed safe zone, over 75 Palestinians were killed overnight. We are witnessing a crime of unproportionate horror in Gaza every day. Children are left orphaned as entire families are wiped out in this onslaught. Meanwhile, the Liberals continue to arm Netanyahu over $28 million worth of military exports since October alone. How many 20 more Palestinian children have to be killed for this government to end arms exports to Israel.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Thank the member for that question. It's an important question. What is happening in Gaza is a complete tragedy. Netanyahu's military operation Rafah is devastating Palestinians and others who are seeking shelter. Gazans have nowhere else to go. And as the minister said, asking them to move again is totally unacceptable. This violence must stop. We must have a sustainable peace. Hostages must be returned, and we must find a way forward to get humanitarian assistance to the people who need it the most. Thank you.
Thus comes to an end of question period for today. I see the honourable member from Regina Capella, who's rising on his feet on a point of order.
I just want to hear what this is.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to move that the House expresses solidarity with the prisoners.
I'm afraid that the honourable member, even before he has even asked this question, is soliciting notes from the House. I encourage all members once again to please try to negotiate your request for unanimous consent so that we can.
I'm not sure what his request was.
That we use your time more.
Okay. Thanks for joining me today. We're trying to do this as consistently as possible, and it's been a really difficult week for me, as I've shared on my regular broadcasts. And I just want to thank everybody for the support you've shown, your comments, your very kind comments. And we're still in there pitching. But I would like to say I had a great interview today with Neil Oliver. Everybody out there is always commenting on Neil Oliver and the fact that how much you love this guy. And he is just phenomenal. We spoke for an hour and a half. It was probably the best interview I've done since I started this independent news broadcast, Stand on Guard. I've had some great interviews with people like Naomi Wolf and Maxime Bernier. And somebody the other day accused me of ignoring Maxime Bernier. He's a friend of mine. And I love the work Maxime does. And I support the man in so many ways. So that's an aside. But the interview today, and we had to divide it into two parts, is just really worth watching because this is a guy who never cared about politics. You know, he told me today he considered himself apolitical. He was an archaeologist, an historian who just wanted to do his work. He had his opinions, but he never joined a political party. He never really was concerned. He always believed the government was on his side, no matter whether it was conservative or Labour in the UK. And of course, Neil is Scottish. He's a citizen of the United Kingdom of Great Britain. And he always thought the government was on his side, basically. But he said COVID-19 and the mandates, the lockdowns changed that. And he realized the government wasn't on his side. They were on the side of the World Economic Forum and the globalist agenda. And that was no longer just some esoteric idea, some crazy conspiracy theory, because that's what they were saying. And suddenly all of these democratic governments were following the advice of the globalists, of the World Economic Forum. Suddenly they were all marching together, and they're still doing it, folks. Canada, United States, Great Britain, Australia, New Zealand, Ireland, all of the traditional democratic English-speaking countries are marching in lockstep with the WEF, and this is frightening. So watch the interview. We're going to put the first one up later today, and the second one will go up tomorrow. But Neil has always got something great to say, and he's promised to come back on the show anytime I ask, and I will be asking again. And because this is a guy who really is a fighter. And we need fighters. We need people out there who are willing to exercise the freedom of speech we still have to some degree. Because if we don't exercise what we have, we'll lose it. It's like if you don't exercise your muscles, you get flabby. You've got to keep exercising our rights or we're going to lose them all. And that's what Justin Trudeau wants. And that's what these Liberals that you heard today, reading their little scripts, reading their talking points, that's what they want for us and for Canada. Thanks for watching today, folks. I'll be back again tomorrow. And please watch the next Stand on Guard broadcast with Neil Oliver. And thank you for your support over the last week. It's been a hell of a bad one.